Hi there, this is Tyler, and I am here with two friends of mine from the Gauntlet, which if you watch me, I play with the Gauntlet quite a lot. Some of the best role players you're ever going to find. Amazing, amazing community. First off, wonderful designers, wonderful players, just a phenomenal group to be with. We have like 200 games a month. We have a zine, which is producing wonderful things. We have a con. We're starting a publishing week. Lots of stuff going on the Gauntlet. And if you want to find it, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and you can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com. I'm here with two wonderful folks, and we're going to be playing a game from that zine, Codex Flame, in fact. And the game is called Fireships at Midnight. And as it turns out, I'm the one who wrote it. So we're going to be playing my game with kind of the intention of looking at it, seeing how it plays within mind that I might try and do some other things with the mechanic and with the game. So we're going to be kind of taking a little delve into it. I don't know if either of you played before, but if you have, when you introduce yourself, let me know. But I want to say first off, we've got a couple of safety tools on the table. This game doesn't delve too much into problematic things. It is a game about the Spanish Armada, which it's not about the big battles at sea. It's actually about once those are done and getting back home after the battle. But we'll come to that in a moment. Our safety tools, we have the Gauntlet Inclusivity Policy, which in effect is saying we're here to take care of each other, have a good time, be supportive and generous, to enjoy a game. We're friends at a table enjoying gaming. And so we're here to always build each other up. We never tear each other down. I also have the X card on the table, which for those of you who don't know, the X card's there if something gets, a little problematic, a little personal, a little into the areas where it's just not fun for you anymore. And if that happens, you could do something like this. You could put an X in the chat. You could even say, hey, Tyler, I think I want to X that. Now, if you put something in the chat, I have a tendency to look at my players rather than the chat, so you might want to direct my attention there. But if we have something like that occur, we'll just pull back and we'll reframe the scene and we'll move forward. There's no questions asked. Please feel free to use it if at any time something is just isn't fun. But it's here to take care of us all and make sure we have the best time possible. Now, I'd like for you two to introduce yourselves. I'm going to start with my left. Keith, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us if you played this before?
Hi, I'm Keith Stetson, gamer, designer, writer, teacher, rock climber outside of Philadelphia. Although I am super into games of this sort, I have not played this one before, but when I saw the design of it, I was really excited for it and had really great experiences with Tyler before. And I'm very excited to see that although we're down a person, we got Walter. And that's a really exciting group to be a part of. So I'm hyped for this.
Thank you very much. And Walter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Walter. I'm playing from San Francisco today. And I have not played this before, but the mechanics look really fascinating. So I'm super excited to give it a try and see what kind of story we make.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And what we're going to do is we're going to play this rules is written just straight across. It is a game that takes, in general, about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's a fairly quick game. It's designed for 3 players or 3 players and a facilitator. I'm going to be playing in this instance and kind of facilitating. So if we're ready, we're going to go ahead and just hop right in because the game itself, as written, should explain everything as we go. Let's hope so. So I'll start with the first page. And what I'll do is I'm going to have everybody kind of read a page. We'll just go down the line, each of us reading it. So, to start, in late May of 1588, King Philip II of Spain dispatched the Grande y Felicissima Armada, known as the Spanish Armada, to invade England under the command of the Duke of Medina Sidonia. Manned by Spain's best sailors, prepared to transport a massive army, and carrying priests of the Inquisition, the Armada intended to bring England back to the Catholic fold. At midnight on the 28th of July, as they close anchored for the night, an English fireship attack ended all their hopes. What happened after became a legendary disaster. In Fireships at Midnight, players take on the roles of the Duke of Medina Sidonia, Cardinal Ribera and Captain Salazar, referred to collectively as the Pillars. They must endure the horrors of the journey, but most importantly, they must save their own reputations when they return to Spain. The game is played over 3 turns, referred to as conflicts, each with 4 phases. Each character will have a pool of 6-sided dice, which they will use to bid and roll for authority in each conflict. A result of 1 to 3 on a die is a failure, while a 4 to 6 is a success. Successes are totaled with failures subtracted and compared to the conflict resolution chart, known as the CRC. Once all conflicts are resolved, we discover the reception our characters receive back home in Spain. While all the action in Fireships at Midnight takes place on the ocean, it is how they are received in Spain that is most important to the Pillars. Using various machinations to overcome or endure the conflicts and eliminate their rivals will leave one pillar with narrative control once the Armada returns to Spain. In the end, any price is worth paying to save their reputation. Players should take turns reading aloud each section up to the conflicts. Conflicts will be read during play. Once all conflicts have been faced, move on to return to Spain. Keith, would you read our characters page for us?
We have 3 characters. The Duke of Medina Sidonia, starting pool 8 dice. The Duke was appointed Admiral of the Spanish Armada despite having no real qualifications. He was, however, a skilled courtier, brave fighter, and loyal servant of the crown. His efforts probably made a doomed invasion less of a disaster than it otherwise would have been. The Duke may reroll any 1 die on each CRC where he is the active pillar. Cardinal Ribera, starting pool 6 dice. The Cardinal is a composite of the many priests and inquisitors who sailed with the Armada. They were fanatical in their devotion to the Church and their king. The Inquisition's arrogance and zealous certainty of its righteousness elevated the invasion to a holy war. Once the Spanish army landed, the English heretics would be tried and burned at the stake. The Cardinal may change 2 dice to any result on the CRC once per game. And Captain Salazar, starting pool 6 dice. The captain is a composite of several very capable naval commanders who were hamstrung by politics and forced to accept an inexperienced noble as admiral. Spanish captains were the most experienced sailors on the high seas, often commanding the same ship for many years. The captain may take all failed dice rolled on the CRC into his pool once per game.
Thank you. Walter, will you read our 4 phases of conflict?
Yes, the 4 phases of conflict. Introduction. The first phase. The captain reads aloud the conflict and the 4 plans to deal with it. Then they describe the state of the fleet at that moment. Be as inventive and descriptive as you like. Second phase, negotiations. The Duke describes the location where the pillars are meeting and directs the conversation as the pillars discuss how to deal with the conflict. The pillars may beg, threaten, bargain, or simply cooperate. However, no agreement is binding when your reputation is on the line. Third phase, bidding. The players secretly bid dice from their pool to become the active player, with authority to deal with the conflict. The bid will also be the dice they roll with on the CRC. The highest bid wins and picks a plan, with ties broken in favor of the Duke, and then the Cardinal. Players who lose the bid may give one of their bid dice to the winner for the CRC roll, but all others are lost. Each player must bid a minimum of 1 die. Fourth phase, resolution. The Cardinal describes the prayer blessing they bestow on the fleet, and the active pillar rolls the dice from the winning bid, plus any given by the losers, and compares it to the CRC. Failures are subtracted from successes. Once the indicated pillar describes the aftermath of the roll, the Armada moves on to the next conflict. Any use of a pillar's special power are done in the same order as breaking ties: Duke, then Cardinal, then Captain. Players should note if the conflict was heroically overcome or merely endured. Successfully overcoming conflicts is all that matters when we return to Spain.
Thank you. Our return to Spain. Once the fleet returns to Spain, the pillars are to tally whether each conflict was overcome or endured, and how many pillars still have dice in their pools. In many ways, this is the true thrust of the game. For some pillars, overcoming conflicts is not the best way to secure their reputation. The final scene is described based on the following. If no conflicts are overcome and no pillars have dice left, the cardinal describes how the church views him as a martyr and the other pillars as sinners and fools. If no conflicts are overcome and one or more pillars survive, the captain describes how the public blames the crown and the church for Spanish humiliation. If one conflict is overcome and one or fewer pillars remaining pillar, or the duke, if none, describes how he lays blame for the failure at the feet of the other pillars. One conflict overcome and two or more pillars survive, the cardinal describes how the crown protects itself from blame and punishes the returning pillars. Two conflicts overcome and one or fewer pillars, the remaining pillar, or the captain if none, describes how the pillars are made heroes of the moment, but also how history remembers them poorly. Two conflicts overcome and two or more pillars survive, the captain describes how the crown turns this into a victory and how the crown shows the pillars as heroes. Three conflicts overcome and one or fewer pillars, the remaining pillar, or cardinal if none, describes how the public views him as a hero as the hero of the day and the other pillars as dead weight. And three conflicts overcome and two or more pillars survive, the duke describes how all the pillars are greeted as heroes and how the crown rewards him. Once the return to Spain description is finished, each player should read aloud the characters afterward. And if you will finish us up, Keith, with the conflict resolution chart.
Okay, conflict resolution chart. 4 or more successes. Active pillar either adds 1 die to their pool or takes 1 die from each other pillar into their pool. They then describe how the fleet overcomes the conflict. 3 successes. Active pillar adds 1 die to their pool and describes how the fleet overcomes the conflict. 2 successes. Active pillar either loses 1 die from their pool and describes how the fleet overcomes the conflict, or adds 1 die to their pool and asks another pillar to describe how the fleet endures the conflict. 1 success. Active pillar either asks another pillar to describe how the fleet endures the conflict, or all pillars lose 1 die from their pool, and the active pillar describes how the fleet overcomes the conflict. No successes. All pillars lose 1 die, and the active pillar describes the horrors required to endure the conflict. And if a pillar has 0 dice at the end of any phase, they are disgraced, killed, or imprisoned. They will describe why and how they were removed as a pillar, and will utter their curse or blessing to the remaining pillars. Once removed as a pillar, a player may demand a reroll of 1 die in each CRC roll to reflect their curse/blessing. However, they are no longer a part of the bidding phase. They may participate in the other phases as a proxy successor or in disgrace.
All right, then. So, are there any questions at this point, kind of how we play, and who do we like to each play? Keith, any questions? And is there someone that kind of calls to you?
I think, not a specific question, but once I know my character, because this is sort of, I don't know if I want to say competitive, but like there is more of a win condition for some of the characters. Like you're driving towards a certain thing as a captain that you wouldn't be as a cardinal.
Correct.
And I think once I know who I am, the return to Spain section will probably be easier to parse.
Okay.
Anybody
calling to you?
My initial instinct is to probably not play the cardinal, but at the same time, that might be a good reason to try to play something I wouldn't normally play. So I'm pretty open, honestly.
All right. Well, Walter, any questions at this point, and anyone calling to you?
No questions, but for some reason the captain looks interesting.
Okay. Excellent. So if you'd like to do the captain, that sounds fantastic. So Keith, which of the other two would you like to play?
For your testing purposes, is there one that you would prefer to play or not to play?
No, I'm perfectly open to either or.
Then I'm going to go for it, and I'll try Cardinal Riviera.
Excellent. All right, then. Well, that gives me the Duke. So, a good thought here is before we head into it is kind of look over those the return to Spain things and kind of see maybe where you think, that early strategy of, do I want to think about as the Cardinal just not succeeding at things, so I have this good shot of getting my narrative at the end. And really the payoff is that chance to describe what happens at the end. When we go into conflicts, which is our next bit, you will see that each conflict has 4 solutions to 4 plans of action. For each plan of action, someone will have an advantage, or there is a generic a generic bad result on one as well, which has to do with adding dice, adding successes into the roll. Those are directly successes rather than dice. So keep that in mind. So if we have any questions, if not, any questions up for anyone?
I do have a question now.
Okay.
The Cardinal may change 2 dice to any result on the CRC roll once per game.
Yes.
Do the dice hang out on the CRC, or is that just when... Actually, not even necessarily me. When someone makes a roll.
What you would do is someone would make their roll, and once the roll has been made, the Duke would have his opportunity, because we do special powers in order. The Duke might say, okay, I'm going to re-roll one of these, and he would do his power. If he doesn't do it, then the Cardinal can just look at the ones that have been rolled and say, I'm going to change the 2 of them to successes or 2 of them to failures, however he wishes to do it, once per game.
Okay, and then the dice get cleared off after that conflict is resolved.
And then once that conflict is completed, and we'll have the captain with his opportunity. Once they've all been it's been resolved, the captain can use his power to say, I'm going to take all these failures and put them right into my pool. Which can be a neat swing. It's an interesting swing for that. The captain can suddenly have a massive die pool there. Worth noting, and something I think I've seen a little difficulty with, is that once when the captain pulls his thing, pulls those out, rules is written, it doesn't suddenly make that a success. We've already resolved, then the captain is pulling out the failures. So it doesn't, the failures don't go away before we do the resolution. All right? Unless there's other questions. Okay. Then we can keep an eye there on the 4 phases of conflict, and we're going to start with phase 1, which is the introduction. And so, Captain, read aloud our conflict and the plans for it, and then describe to us what the fleet looks like.
Yes. So, fire ships at midnight. The perfidious English have lit their own ships on fire, filled them with pitch, and are sailing them toward the bulk of the fleet at anchor. In a panic, the majority of captains have cut anchor and are scattering. The current and the wind are pushing the fleet north, out of the English Channel. How will the pillars attempt to keep the fleet from falling into complete disarray? And now I read the plans? Okay, plans. Plan 1, signal to the fleet to tack into the wind and reform to the north. Plus 2 successes for the captain on the CRC if the captain is active. Trust in the Almighty to bring his flock to safety. Plus 2 successes for the Cardinal on the CRC if they are active. Send small ships out to cover the retreat and protect the fleet. Minus 1 success. Signal for all capital ships to converge on the flagship and leave the others to their fate. Plus 1 success for the Duke on the CRC if active.
Okay, and with this in mind, tell us, Captain, how's the fleet look?
Oh, it is in complete disarray, It is late at night. It is not the best weather. It is wind coming and pushing the ships. It is difficult for them to stay together. They have just gone in a panic in every direction. Many of them cannot see each other anymore. The strength of the Armada in its numbers has been dissipated as they have separated in every direction, and the surprise and the power of a unified attack that we were planning has already been lost. Now we are merely trying to save the Armada.
Excellent. We now move to second phase, the negotiations. And so I, as the Duke, am going to describe the location where we're meeting. I think we're on the flagship, and we're up on the high castle at the back end, where the steering is, and looking across the flames. The men are running about as the captain is, the Duke is kind of yelling orders, but may not be listened to nearly as much by the men as they probably are listening to the captain, him being a far better sailor. And he has called in the cardinal and the captain to Captain, this is a disaster. Why are they all fleeing like this? What's going on here?
Well, we were taken by surprise. The English have snuck up upon us in the night with their ships aflame. And in order to save our ships, we have many of the captains have wisely cut anchor and scattered. But alas, now we are separated, and we have to find each other again. We must signal to the fleet.
Signal to the fleet, Cardinal. Surely the Lord has not deserted us.
The fires of hell have converged upon our armada to punish some of our sailors for their sins.
Oh dear, that's... Did you feel that the Lord himself is to blame for this?
Blame is a strong word, Duke. He works in mysterious ways. His protection clearly has been lifted from parts of this armada, and those shall be reduced to ash this evening.
Well, the best thing we could do is call in our big ships, right? I mean, if we get them all here, then maybe we can preserve what we have left.
The Spanish Armada is the glory of our empire, and we must bring back as many ships as we can and reunify the Armada. We have the best captains in the world aboard our ships. And if we give them the appropriate signal, they will return to each other. We can bring the Armada back together.
Well, I worry that if we begin to lose all these ships, Cardinal, perhaps we can make the Lord himself shine more favor upon us.
Let us pray for guidance. And if people are looking towards the cardinal for that, he'll definitely lead everyone in as long a prayer as possible to try to use up the time so that his course of action seems more likely, since the longer it goes without anyone taking action, the more likely it is that the divine punishment will be enacted.
Yes, Cardinal, your prayers are appreciated, and we need them, but we must act now.
Captain, I see the wisdom in what you're saying. Perhaps if we can save as many as possible, that's... His Most Catholic Majesty will be very, very angry with me if I bring back a diminished fleet. Captain, I will bow to your wisdom in this. Cardinal, do you see the reason with what the captain proposes?
His attempt to save lives is noble, although perhaps doomed. But it is something that should be tried. Do your best, Captain.
All right, we can, unless there's further negotiations. we can take a second here on kind of the meta level that sounds like the Duke is saying, "I'll support you there, Captain." Cardinal, would you say sounds a little like that to you? Is that
As far as if I would also support
yeah?
for the captain, yeah.
All right. So now we're going to go to our bidding phase. What we'll do is in our chat, type in how many of your dice you wish to bid, keeping in mind a tie will be broken with the Duke, then with the Cardinal, then with the Captain, and keeping in mind that with the plans, if you don't have a bonus of successes on a plan chosen, then there's, there is no bonus. It's only if you're active. So type in what you want, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, and we'll hit enter.
So one question before we...
Yes.
Have we chosen the signal to the fleet plan then?
We don't make that the active pillar. Whoever wins the bid will then say, because keep in mind, the captain could at the end of this, I'm going to describe a little since we're doing our first one. The captain could have decided here he wants to screw us all, and we all go, "Oh, sure, Captain," and we let him win this bid, and then he does the -1 one if he wants.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So put into chat how many you wish to bid, and we're ready. 1, 2, 3. Woo, Captain! You have
go big or go home.
You have definitely won that. And so now we go around, those of us who have lost, starting with the Duke. I will give you one die that I bid. So if we go over to our roll for our party, Captain, pull up 5 of your dice to the center there. And I'm going to put one of my dice up there as well. And Cardinal, are you giving your die to the captain as well?
Well, I think that his effort is admirable. I am not supporting it materially with dice.
All right, then. Pull one of your die and put it down in the bottom below the picture there to represent that it is now out of play. And I'm going to go over here to our return to Spain. And boop, boop. There. We have clicked our first little set there to show we're in the first phase. All right. So now that we have made our bid and seen who's won it, Walter, Captain, what plan are you taking?
Oh, I am definitely taking the plan to call the ships back.
All right. So you're taking the one that will give you an extra success. So now we move
2 successes, I think.
Yes, 2 extra successes.
Ooh.
And now we go to the resolution phase. Cardinal, describe the prayer blessing that you're going to bestow upon the fleet.
It is a morbid blessing of something along the lines of, "May the hellfire of our Lord spare as many of our countrymen as are deserving, and may he will that we 3 be among those so spared."
Amen.
Amen.
And so, Captain, roll your die.
Yes. Well, I got 2 5s, and then add 2 successes. So I believe that's 4 successes.
Yep, but it's -4 as well.
Oh, right. Oops. Oh, no. So then it's a total of 0 successes.
It's a total of 0 successes.
Okay.
I can't use my special power because I'm not active. Cardinal, you could use yours if you'd like.
Nope, I'm good with that.
All right. Captain, would you like to use yours?
Well, I could take 4 of my 5 dice back, so yes. I will
All right.
absolutely do
I've
that.
had time to use that.
So you have used your special for this time. Go ahead. You can pull 4 of yours back into your pool. But that means that we look at our resolution chart, and with no successes, all pillars lose 1 die, and the active pillar, which is you, Captain, describes the horrors required to endure this conflict. What awful things occur.
It is horrendous. So we light the signal fires and the lamps, and we do our best to find each other. But the fog has rolled in. It is a rough and stormy night, and is as easily as we can find each other, the English can continue to find us with their fire ships, and it is a disaster. Many ships are lost. The few that managed to huddle together, some of them are burned by the English, and many are simply not seen again this evening.
Oh, and so off we go. Captain, I think it was a good plan, but fate, or perhaps the Almighty, was not with us. And so we each had to lose one. And Captain, I believe that means you need to drop one more down, don't you? There we go. All right. So we move on to the second conflict. Captain, would you be so kind as to read it?
That would be me. I'm the captain.
Yep.
Rough waters and storms. Having been pushed into the North Sea, the Armada must deal with the horrors of weather in September during the Little Ice Age. As storms rage, much of the fleet is forced onto the rocky shores of Scotland and North Ireland. The cold numbs sailors and makes ships hard to handle, while tornadoes and rogue waves capsize the unwary. How will the Pillars navigate around the British Isles, hold the fleet together, and eventually return southward toward home? Plans. 1. Consolidate all personnel into the most seaworthy ships and scuttle the rest. +2 successes for the captain factive. Or order all ships to bend every sail, leave those who fall behind. +1 success to the Duke if active. Third plan, stay in loose formation and continue to weather the elements as best you can. -1 success. Or 3, keep close formation and share resources as best you can. +2 successes for the Cardinal if active.
All right, and how does the fleet look to us, Captain?
It is ragged. Ships are being lost. Some ships are going aground. We're doing our best to pull the ships together, but we clearly are going to take many losses. And it is just a matter of how can we limp back to Spain with the most of our personnel and ships intact.
All right. And so it moves to negotiations. I think this time the Duke has called Cardinal Ribera and Captain Salazar to his stateroom. And despite the fact that sailors are starting to go a little hungry, there is a beautiful layout of food, roasted meats, and there is wine. And it's quite warm in his cabin as he... please, gentlemen, come in. This is most unpleasant. I've heard rumors amongst the men that they are becoming, well, unhappy with how things are going. Captain, what should we do here?
Well, I mean, it's clear what's happening is that many ships have been lost. Many sailors are losing their fellow sailors, their friends and colleagues that they've worked with and sailed with. Respective captains have lost their ships. We need to bring all the personnel back. We need to take the most seaworthy ships that we have and take the pride of the Spanish Armada, the sailors, and put them aboard the most seaworthy ships so we can bring as many of them home as possible. We can rebuild ships, but these sailors have been active for years, and they are the most skilled on the seas. They are our best resource and must be saved.
Captain, I listened to you earlier, and it was, well, it did not go well at all. Cardinal, I should have listened to the wisdom of the Almighty. Please, now
The wisdom of the Almighty does not care if you listen to it or not. He will have his way. But the captain speaks wisely that we must keep as many alive as we can. And I think if we find better uses of our resources, reaches out and kind of taps one of the silver platters that the roast meat is on, perhaps we could keep the men alive and have enough hands to bring many ships back into port. I believe the sovereign would look kindly upon that. Perhaps the Almighty on high would as well.
I see the wisdom in what you say. I say as the Duke reaches down to grab a leg off of one of the chickens. Captain, do you think that would save us?
Perhaps that is the best we have. At this point, things are so bad that we must do everything we can, conserve our resources, and having the grace of God on our side now would be a good thing.
And I also see that I can't imagine scuttling ships, Captain. Cardinal, yes, I think you have the best plan of action.
It is not my plan. It is the will of the Almighty, of course.
Of course.
It would be our honor to enact it here upon the sea.
The morale has been sapped by the horrible events, and now they could use the comfort and the hope in the Almighty that your prayers can give to them. I would support you if you would instruct the men in working together to save their resources and to do it under the will of the Almighty.
Yes, and of course we should. And he claps in some of the ship boys. We should drink to this. Open more bottles of wine, please. Enjoy this food. If we're going to be sharing out the food, then we definitely should enjoy it while it's here. Please drink, eat.
There's enough wine without opening another bottle.
Of course, Cardinal.
Let us partake in moderation.
Moderation, yes. Unless there's further negotiations. All right. We go into the bidding phase.
When you bid, if you're the active player, whether they're successes or failures, the dice go away, correct?
If whatever you bid, if you fail, yeah. At the end of the conflict, those dice go away. And keep in mind that no matter how many you bid, if you lose, you can give one or only one, and all the rest go away. All right?
And you get more dice by being successful.
If we're successful, we can get more dice. Of course, we can lose dice, too, if we're not very successful.
I noticed that last time.
All right. Feel free, gentlemen, to choose how many dice you're going to bid. And if we're ready, 1, 2, 3. Cardinal, you have a 1, and so you now will give your blessing, and you are the choose your plan first. Which plan do you wish to enact, Cardinal?
I'll do as I say, keep the close formation.
All right.
And intone a blessing about helping our brother man, and all pulling in the same direction. Many hands make light work. And also give impromptu mass with a little bit of the blood of Christ that the Duke wanted to partake in himself to fortify the sailors against the cold.
Excellent. All right, then. So, Starts with me. I will give the die I bid to you. So it's up in the middle. And
I will add a die.
Okay. So you add in the die you bid. And you will have 2 added successes for yourself there, Cardinal, because you chose your plan. So roll away. Whew.
So let's see. Those cancel out and those cancel out. So we are at 0 again.
We are at 0. I can't use my special power. Cardinal, do you wish to use yours?
Let's see if I change that. There'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, be 4 successes. That's pretty nice. Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I think you'd go to 5 successes, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but then I have a -1 as well, so.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You're right.
I don't actually need to do anything to the dice, right? Because I can't physically change them.
All right, you using your power?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, and I think that's just like he is out there actually doing the work with his sleeves rolled up, and like he's not well suited for it, but it's more of a symbol of like, yes, we are all pulling together. I'm sure Duke isn't actually, but it's a symbol of we're all pulling together. Like he's and his hands are not calloused, so you can see the blood as he's trying to haul on these ropes, and it just what looks like is not going to work. It inspires the men to push through.
Excellent. Woo. So means that you have 4 or better successes.
All right. Active pillar either adds 1 die to their pool or takes 1 die from each other pillar in the pool.
Yeah.
Ooh, I want your dice, guys. That's more than 1.
All right. So, first off, yep, my die goes down below, and I give you. I'm going to slide one of mine over to you.
Okay, and there's mine.
Okay.
So teleported.
Yeah.
And I guess I already described how the fleet was overcoming the conflict. So
indeed. Getting tight on die as we head into our final conflict. So, Captain, will you read our final conflict?
Yes. Plague and sickness on the journey south. After so long at sea, sickness begins to take its toll on the men of the fleet. As sailors and officers alike begin to die, unrest simmers among the survivors. Crews turn on their officers. Individual captains ignore the admiral's orders, and some ships seek any safe harbor. How will the pillars return the armada to King Philip and save their own reputations? Plans 1. Open fire on any who try to abandon the fleet. +1 success if the Duke is active. 2. Rally the priests to give sermons on the divine rights of His Most Catholic Majesty. +2 successes if Cardinal is active. Issue orders that any subordinate crewmen are to be hung immediately. -1 success. Or signal the fleet for all ships to make best sail towards Spain and disperse the armada. +2 successes if captain is active.
And describe the state of our fleet, Captain.
The fleet is in shambles. There is mutiny. There are some ships, the men are simply too sick to work, and they are drifting off course. They are taking land wherever they may. We are losing ships by the day, and it is still a long journey home.
Excellent. I think we're once more in that stateroom, and now the table has less food on it, but it is still way better than the sailors are eating. And the captain has managed to hang on to plenty of his wine, and so there's more wine than food. And the captain has he's bundled in the Duke has held on to more of wine than, and he's bundled in furs, and you could see as the cardinal and captain come in, the Duke is kind of flushed, probably with having drank so much. As he looks up, Cardinal, Captain, the state of this fleet is appalling.
The Cardinal's collar is opposite, like chalky white, as if he might be trying to fight off some of the disease that's spreading around the ships.
Captain, how do you look?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted, dear.
I look ragged, very worse for wear. I have not been sleeping well.
This can't continue. There's mutiny amongst the fleet. We have to get the fleet home. I've listened to others. Now it is time to do as I desire. We shall shoot any of these who dare rebel against my rule.
You needn't shoot them if they fall dead of plague first.
Your anger is understandable, and I am frankly ashamed that some of my fellow seamen have decided to abandon us, but the majority of us are still the Majesty's seamen. We are still what remains the best in the world, and we must just trust to each of us to for each crew to make their way home on their own at this point. There's nothing we can do for each other now. We're simply passing germs around when we continue to stay together and share food. We must just let each ship return as best they can on their own to Spain.
Captain, that borders close to mutiny to have these ships split up. The Armada is mine. I'm responsible.
Perhaps you should start by shooting the captain.
You really think that will increase morale? You think ordering one ship to fire upon their brethren will increase morale and decrease the mutinies? That's crazy. That will only drive us further apart.
Captain, our long friendship in this difficult time allows me to be indulgent with you, but I will not see my glorious fleet dispersed. Such a thing it's unthinkable.
Would you rather see them at the bottom of the ocean, or floating above it as ghost ships filled with withered away skeleton crew?
Well, then what do you propose, Cardinal?
We must heal the sailors. It will improve morale and allow them to man the ships to sail home to their majesties.
I cannot allow the fleet to split, but Cardinal, if we can heal them, yes, that might not be the worst idea I've heard.
We must curry favor with the divine. We have done much right, but much wrong.
Captain.
You may give a look at your wine bottle at that point.
Captain, careful with your words, but what say you to the Cardinal's plan? You're muted.
Cardinal's plan is better than simply shooting each other, but I still advocate that we send the ships on their way. Let them each do their best.
I will not agree to split the fleet, but I will at least allow you to try your plan, Cardinal. Any further negotiations? Anyone with anything else to say?
Well, I've said enough, but what I do may be another matter.
All right. So we get to the final bid.
Give me a second to think about this one.
Mm-hmm. I find that there's a lot of, work together, and then we get to the end and it's more like, what am I really wanting out of this?
I really don't have many choices left at this point. It's hard to bluff when you're not holding many cards.
All right. Are you ready, Cardinal?
Yes.
All right. Ready, Walter? Ready, Captain? All right. 1, 2, 3. Ho, 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 ho! Clever, Cardinal. Clever. All right.
Going for it.
You have won the bid. What plan are you choosing?
Well, that the men won't accept the judgment of the Almighty, of whom he wishes to smite and whom he wishes to save, and think that they are the masters of their own fate. They should clearly be hanged. So I will issue orders throughout the ships to that effect.
That they should be what?
That they should be hanged.
Oh, ho, ho. All right. So the plan is to hang the -1 success roll. All right. The Duke is going to, let's see, I've got 3 I've bid. Oh, we needed to clear out the pool from before, didn't we? Sorry, I'm going to pull those down real quick.
Oh, no, those were the ones. Those are the 4 I put up, and I think Walter put 1 in there.
Yeah. Although now that you said the plan, I might reconsider.
Okay.
I'm going to take the option there.
Yeah. Would you like to withdraw?
I'm just kind of looking over the options here.
The weird thing is,
it's much easier to focus on exactly what the outcomes could be now that we're getting down to that, now that we're at the bottom of the funnel here.
Even though I have a crazy plan, you still want me to succeed, so we overcome the conflict?
Well, maybe.
You might die.
Right? All right. Okay, I'm going to put a die in. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that one goes back up. There we go. All right. So your 4 and each one of ours. Because there's also the kind of interesting thing of the more die you have, the more chances for failures, too.
Yeah, it's not necessarily better, which is interesting. So let's see.
So your blessing first.
Oh, yeah. I think it's got to be very New Testament, Jesus laying hands on the sick kind of thing, leper references, but also mixed in with those who pass through this test will emerge stronger. So not necessarily hey, we're all going to get through this, guys. But those of us that do will be awesome. Let's see how awesome.
Let's see.
Not awesome.
Well, that gives us no successes. In fact, negative successes.
-3 successes.
And I am not active pillar. You've already used your special, as has the captain. So, all pillars lose 1 die. I lose mine. Captain, you lose your last one as well. And we have all of our active pillars who have been killed or disgraced or imprisoned. But first, and we'll come to that just as soon as we get to the end of the phase, because active pillar, Cardinal, describe to us the horrors required to get through this conflict of hanging men.
Yeah, well, I think there's also disease continues spreading because we're laying hands on it. We don't understand germ theory, and we are just spreading the disease to everyone. And the few healthy men that do try to flee are hanged by the healthy men who still hold firm to the words that the Cardinal is still repeating through his dried and cracked lips as he is succumbing to the disease that he was trying to minister against.
All right. And so I'll let you kind of continue on with, tell us how you killed, disgraced, or imprisoned?
Yeah, I mean, I think he succumbs to the plague that is running through the ship. And there's this scene of like one of the acolytes kind of questioningly looking into the Cardinal's eyes as the Cardinal has given up finally at that point, reciting holy words and is just saying, please help me. I'm so cold, please. I don't want this to happen. And the acolyte is visibly losing faith as the Cardinal loses his life.
Oh, nice. I will give my death. I believe that, as you know, becoming more and more inebriated as this is going on, watching people hanging from the yard arms and the fleet all around him, the captain becomes where he is almost never sober, and railing against his seamen. You, how dare you? You all, you deserve this. You have brought me nothing but shame. You are to blame for these losses. You, until finally the ship rebels against him, and he is drugged down to the brig and casted to a cell where he screams from it, "Damn you all! When we get back to Spain, I'll see all of you hung!" Captain.
The captain is disgraced. Mutinies, lost ships, some ships simply never heard from again, and it is the morale of the sailors, the pride of the Spanish Navy, has been irreparably harmed after this horrible defeat, combined with hanging the few survivors who didn't commit mutiny, or at least didn't get away with committing mutiny. There is, of the few sailors who remain, they are completely demoralized, and all it is absolute disgrace for the captain of the Spanish Armada.
A last blessing or curse upon the fleet?
The captain has given his entire life to the fleet. He was sailing as a young lad and worked his way his entire life on the fleet. And he gives it his blessing because he can only hope that it will somehow overcome this absolute catastrophe.
And so we return to Spain. Once the fleet returns to Spain, the pillars are to tally each conflict overcome or endured and how many pillars have survived. We have overcome one, and none of us have survived, which means the remaining pillar, or the Duke if none, describes how he lays blame for the failure at the feet of the other pillars. And so as the fleet, or what remains of it, finally crawls back into Cadiz in Spain, the Duke is drug out in chains and brought before the king. Your Majesty, I tried my best. The captain wouldn't listen to me. And that damnable priest, I think he brought curses upon the whole fleet. I did everything I could. Mutinies everywhere. It was not my fault, Your Majesty. I did everything I could. Everything. As up on the throne, the king simply shakes his head. We now will read the afterword. The afterword is done in order, each little paragraph. The Duke, the Cardinal, and the Captain. I'll read the first, the Duke. Despite his best attempts, the Duke of Medina Sidonia is remembered as having commanded one of the worst naval disasters in history, whether fairly or not. He continued to serve the crown for decades afterward with a consistent lack of success on the seas. He is eventually a target of ridicule by Miguel de Cervantes as a typical noble fool. Cardinal?
The Church and the Inquisition remained powerful in Spain for centuries to come. The Inquisition lasted nearly 350 years, officially ending in 1834. Modern estimates are that 150,000 people were prosecuted and 5,000 killed. Countless Jewish and Muslim families were forced to renounce their faith. Rumors persist that the Inquisition still exists to this day.
And Captain.
Despite the skills of these captains, nearly half of the ships, 63 ships, and 2/3 of the men, or 18,000 men, were lost. While Spain remained the most powerful kingdom on earth, the defeat of the Armada is seen as the beginning of its decline. Rampant inflation, mismanagement, and the rise of Britain and other Protestant nations would eventually leave Spain a shadow of its past glory. The reputation of the Spanish Navy would never recover.
And that, gentlemen, is Fire Ships at Midnight. Why don't we take a 5-minute break, and or let's go ahead and take an 8-minute break, and if folks we'll come back at 20 after the hour, and we'll do a little feedback on this if everybody's up for it. All right. See y'all in 8 minutes. Well, did you have fun, Walter?
I did have fun. Yeah, that was nice, and it was a pretty fast game too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's designed to be quick. Once Keith gets back, I'll talk a little bit about. There we are. We pretty much got through it in an hour and 10 minutes, which is on the shorter side that I've seen. That may have been a little. I had a Duke that sort of spent the first ones really agreeing with folks rather than fighting his own. I've seen it go an hour and 45, and that's along with where people really are kind of just going button heads over what plan to do and seeing if they can make sure people don't bid too high against them. But it's designed to be a quick one. It's designed for 3 people to sit down and be done in 2 hours. I appreciate y'all playing a lot, and I'd like to get a little feedback. So if just to put a little structure on it, though we're gonna people talk, just talk away about it, but a little structure of let's talk about fire ships and what we thought of it as our first bit. Then let's do some stars for our players and things that you liked. And then our third bit, why don't we do a little bit of what you think does it seem like this has enough oomph to use in other scenarios? So let's start off talking a little bit about fire ships itself. Keith, would you like to go ahead and start us off on that?
Sure. Is it just general impressions or?
Yeah, general impressions. It could be, we can do it as a Thorns. We're going to come to stars after this anyway. So yeah, go ahead and, general impressions and some, thorny bits.
I definitely enjoyed sort of the board gamey elements where it had strategy involved, and I was driving for a particular thing, but it also had interesting randomization. Excuse me. Nope, not going to sneeze. Thought that was going to happen. But the randomization also kind of put a kink in some of the plan. Like I was driving towards something and went, oh, okay. So going to the dice was interesting and thematic in that it sort of felt like you'd be very unlikely to have good things happen because of the failures taking away successes. Which was not intuitive, but is an interesting wrinkle to it in that, like, historically, this didn't go so well. So the mechanics are in there to reflect, it's less likely to go well. You have a handful of dice in most games, you think, all right. But it's not. It's a Lady Blackbird die pool.
Mm-hmm. I would say that when I looked at things, and I have had games where it went really well, where, in the sense that, we're 50-50 on the die. The subtraction, is going to really, take that to a sub-zero idea. But with the add-ons of, say you pick your own thing, you're up there at that 2 level, which gets you into the kind of PBTA idea of choices. We ended up being either really good with a huge one or really bad, because our mid ones are things where you have to then decide, am I going to lose die to make this be good, or am I going to make it be bad but I get to keep die, and picking up some die. So that's where that mid range, and it's really odd we didn't have any mid ranges at all. Sorry to interrupt. I'll let you continue.
I was counting on a mid-range for the last one because I had a little chart here. It's like 1 conflict that we overcome and 2 or more pillars alive. I'm going to die. That's fine. I'm a martyr, but as long as you guys are like, oh, no successes. They both lose die. Everyone's gone. Okay. Darn, the best laid plans.
And we'll come back to you, Keith, on this because we'll do it as a conversation here. But Walter, thoughts that you have?
Yeah, I thought the mechanics struck me as really fascinating, and this was my impression. I don't, I'm like not characterizing it the way that like everybody would see it, but kind of just having read the rules before we started playing and going into it. and I think I still feel this way after having played it once, is it's like I feel like it did something really interesting where it feels like at any given moment, like I have a choice that matters, but because the way the bidding and the outcomes actually work are kind of convoluted and can easily flip one way or the other with just like an extra success or failure. It's really hard to make a long range plan because like it could kink in any direction, no matter how things seem to be going. So, which I kind of, I mean, the way I interpreted it is that it actually makes for a really great story game in the sense that it like builds towards tragedy, right? Like no matter what you do, things are going to generally go poorly, and you could always, be at risk of your character, being ended, being taken out, and failing, right? So there's always that sense of dread. But at any given moment, there's this sense of like, well, what I do now really matters, right? And so it's like this kind of like impetus to like be involved and and every decision at every step of the way. So I felt like that was a really interesting. That was like my interpretation of like what the rules were kind of like building toward.
Cool. We saw in our second round that ended up being a real big round for us. Because we ended up like succeeding on it. You chose Take Die Away, which I mean, it ended up being a real flavor moment for what our thing was looking like. Does it feel like to you guys? My hope is that first round is kind of you feel your way into it, and the conflicts as they go ramp up in the intensity of what's happening. Does that seem like what's happening? And Keith, thoughts maybe on how that dynamic goes.
So the idea that the Fireships at Midnight conflict is less intense as it's going through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I necessarily got that. It was, at least I don't know if I'd say intense, although it was a little more nerve-wracking because we were lower on the dice.
Mm.
And especially you two guys, I believe, bid knowing, well, if we lose a die, that's it. But I still have one in reserve. Whereas I said I'm just going whole hog because unless the Duke's willing to go everything, I got this from the dice that I did earlier. So I guess it was do or die. But I wasn't like, oh my goodness, this particular challenge is the toughest challenge that we're facing.
Okay. Well, not so much that the challenge is tougher, but that we're at a point where we're getting to that return to Spain. The result is more intense, is I suppose what I was saying. But I understand what you're saying, I think.
Although mechanically it does end up tightening the ratchets a little bit there, yeah.
Walter, where you're talking about, not being able to kind of strategize at the beginning, did it feel a little like once we see how things are going, you can make plans for it?
Not like long-term so much. I mean, certainly when it was interesting because I made the big move at the beginning, figuring either I'll get a lot of successes and we'll win, or I'll get a lot of failures and I'll just get all my dice back anyway. And the latter happened, and I think the latter happened about as well as could be expected. But with only 6 dice, and then the attrition of losing dice for the failure, those 6 dice go really fast, right? And pretty soon I was like, no matter how well I conserve my dice, I'll be lucky if I have 1 left at the end.
I've had a variant played. Barry Cook, I believe Barry's last name, ran it and did a variant where the captain, when he takes the die, he does it before resolution. As in, takes all the failure, it now becomes a success with whatever successes are up on the board. What do y'all think of that? Is that too swingy? Is that too powerful for the captain? I'll start with you there, Walter.
I mean, it would definitely make the captain a lot more powerful, right? I mean, as far as the final resolution goes, I'm not. I mean, from what I can tell, the captain tends to do better with more successes, like more like overall successes. So I think it probably does make it more powerful for the captain because it like makes it more likely that not only is the captain gonna get a success on whatever they do that on, but that you know like win the conflict, but that they'll also have a bunch of dice left over as well to survive, right? So and that's something else that is generally true for the captain is the captain surviving versus dying, right? As opposed to the cardinal, I think it's my understanding is generally the cardinal comes out better more often if they die, whereas the captain comes out better more often if they survive.
There is an element of that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Keith, about that with the captain pulling before resolution?
It does make it a lot more powerful because then it's not just you get dice; it's you get dice and this is overcome.
Now, I mean, and it's possible someone else made the plan, but it means we've done an overcome.
Yeah. Which would that? Yeah, I mean that would definitely. I think pretty much obviate the possibility of no conflicts overcome. Like if the captain ever wins, unless they decide not to use that, but it doesn't seem like it's in the captain's best interest to have no overcomes.
Does it seem like it might be a little too potent, then kind of swing things out of the possibility of no overcomes?
Yeah, I think it would.
I mean, from what I recall, like it's actually if there's no overcomes, but the captain survives, then I think that actually works out okay for the captain.
It does. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
No overcomes, but one or more pillars survive. Captain describes how the public blames crown and church. So, I mean, captain, I tried to give spaces where everyone could have something in there. I think, honestly, that the Duke really kind of wants people to die. I think the Cardinal swings a little towards no overcomes or less overcomes. I think the captain kind of has a place all around. Just to ask this, did it feel like your character rang true? Did you feel like during the course of the game, the character had a real essence to them? Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, I got my guy pretty good. Like, he was definitely we're enacting the will, and I might tweak that a little bit, but we're pretty much just doing what the Almighty would want, and it came together pretty quickly. Although I also feel like that's what I was wondering as I was making choices was, could I play this again as a totally different Cardinal? And I think so. Although it's hard to, when I think Inquisition, I don't necessarily think benevolent religious figure, but you could probably have done him the opposite way rather than the cold and caring sort of nihilistic view of this guy.
I had Tomer played him once, and definitely played it towards the I care about the men, and that rang a lot truer, as a goodly Inquisition, than because I admit there's a bit of my bias in here. I'm not a fan of the Inquisition, but he came out with a Cardinal that was not a villain. I have, in almost every other game, seen a pretty nasty Cardinal. The captain almost always comes out as a nice guy. The guy trying to get this thing through. And I've seen swings of the Duke. Walter, what'd you think about for the captain? Did it ring true? Do you have something to grab a hold of to role play?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me like the plans really kind of lend a lot to that for, giving a nice, like, something for each one of them to kind of hold on to, right? And add just like it's pretty clear that, if you advocate for the plan where you get the most bonus, then that's going to, lead you, kind of to a certain, like, point of view for that character, right? So I think that worked really well. And then I love that there's always that option where you can, issue the order with the -1 success. That's very fun.
Cool. My last question, and then I'll just open up for general impressions, and we'll move on. My last question is, oh shoot, it's one of those things. I set myself up to ask the last question, and now I'm having trouble remembering how I phrased it. Did it feel like you learned a little bit about what happened with the Spanish Armada? Keith, I don't know how familiar you were with this piece of history. Did it feel like you learned a little something about it?
Yeah, actually, I was Googling articles a little bit during the break before I went to get a glass of water. I have one open in the other window. It's like, oh, is that what? Oh, because I mean, I think we're generally in the Spanish Armada, amazing fighting force. Oh, and then they were defeated, and that's paved the way for England. But how they were defeated was not something that I knew about.
Cool. Walter, did it feel like it taught something?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, like I heard a little bit about what had happened, but there were a lot of details in this that I wasn't familiar with. And, it always brings it more alive. Like I was actually, one of the things I was thinking while we were doing the wrap up and kind of during the break was like how things like this would probably stick a lot more for students if they like played a game instead of just read it. Because it seems so dry when you just read the description in a book. You're like, yeah, but you play a game like this and it feels more like you're like, watching like a dramatized movie of it or something, it just feels you're more invested in it. It feels more like, yeah, this really matters, right? As opposed to a paragraph in your history book that you hope you remember when the test comes up.
Cool. Thank you both, because the reason I asked that is it's sort of my hope, my dream of this is to make something that can be a teaching aid. I believe very strongly in role play in a classroom. I went to school, studied history and theater. I took classes in using theater to teach, not just in teaching theater, but teaching in other subjects. And part of me would love to make this and a few more scenarios into something that I could look for a grant, put together, and it be a teaching tool for history. So I like to hear that, as Patrick said, oh, you and your edutainment. But that makes me happy. We're going to end out then the talk about fire ships in the kind of, Thorn area with Keith. Do you have anything to end out on or anything more to say?
The one thing, and I don't know if this was a conscious choice, the return to Spain options. When I figured out who I was, I knew which one I wanted, but it was still the way the information was organized. It was hard to keep it in my mind. So like I actually made my own little spreadsheet of like, these results are good for me. These results are sort of good for me. And it would have been helpful to have that to look at, unless that was done consciously to make it so that it would be, you have to think about it more as a player.
That's excellent feedback, because the reason it's formatted the way it is to fit in Codex.
Okay.
It's fitted. It's designed for the word count I had available, and in that set. Do you think that maybe having because we know those results when we go into the game before we start rolling, we know what the return to Spain. Do you think maybe with each of the character descriptions we show return to Spain, kind of like have a favorable, unfavorable medium?
Like, yeah, best for you is 0-0. Second best is 1-2+. And I'd be like, okay, now I know where I'm going.
Okay, I love that. Thank you very much. That's enormously helpful. Thank you, Keith. Walter, any last thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally second what you and Keith were just talking about. I actually made a little table for myself here with all the options. Probably can't see it, but I have like a little. No. I made my own little box diagram, and like definitely the last one I'm looking at, I'm like, oh, I mean, I think both the last two. I was looking at it, and I'm like, well, do I want to support them here? And yeah, and I think that would be good to just put that up front, because Yeah, because there's so much going on that even if everybody is like totally clear on that, it's still going to go off the rails, and there's going to be plenty of it's going to be difficult enough to make choices.
Cool. Thank you very much. And I there just to pop back to something you said there is, giving die or not giving die. If, say, someone's bidding and you think they're wanting to tank it and they won with 2, then giving them a die, once you hear the plan, you're like, okay, that increases the chances it'll go one way or other mine. Because, I mean, the more die, the higher likelihood that if they're going with their plan, that it's going to fail. If they're going with the negative one, more die gives it the swing the other direction. So I thought that was interesting. I always thought that was cool. But a little pat there. All right. Let's slide over to stars. That's a much more fun thing. Keith, would you like to give stars for players and any other thing in there?
I just thought we jumped in really quickly as far as interacting in characters, and I was a little bit nervous with PvP because sometimes, just like as a person, I'm very conflict averse, and I was like, oh, okay, I hope we're not going to get into yelling at each other, and I feel like we did a really good job with the disagreeing, but not hostily, like, what are you talking about, and berating each other, and made it clear that these people had different viewpoints and different desires, but still being respectful as players and being able to have an interaction that kind of cut right to the heart of it, so we knew what was going to happen, and just quick to the next scene or the next step.
Excellent, thank you, Walter. Any stars?
Yeah, I thought the getting into character was really fun. Everybody giving their point of view. I really liked, Tyler, how you were like super into the Duke and you were like really emotional as the Duke, and that was really fun. Yeah, I thought the role playing worked really well. That was my favorite part of it. Was I think it supported like getting into character and the storytelling really well. And I don't know if you did this on purpose, but it felt to me like reading over the 3 character descriptions that like each character description kind of gives the point of view of that character as well. So I felt like, which I thought was really good, because it's like a super succinct description of every character, but like just reading that and my like the plan prompts for each conflicts, it felt like I knew what my point of view was. Like I felt like I have a really strong sense of who I am and what I want to be arguing for and like what arguments I can make, even though it's based on like, 4 or 5 sentences. So I thought that was super well done.
Thank you. I'll say that there was a bit of time coming up with trying to make those, and I had wonderful help from Lowell Francis helped me a good deal in this. Patrick was there beside me, helping me. Sherry Stewart helped me a lot. So I'm glad that came true. The main thing I wanted to make sure was there was something to hook on to these characters. Stars to both of y'all for kind of just really leaning into what the game was. I really appreciate that, leaning into the kind of tragicness of it, and at the same time standing up for your ideas, standing up for the character, because it works best when you say, okay, I can see what my character is wanting, and I'm going to make that character a strong and definitive person. And I thought that was excellent. You both did a wonderful job. And Walter, again, thank you for hopping in so late. I really appreciated that so much. And Stars also, I want to say, if anybody's watching, Stars to Jason Cordova and to Gauntlet and to Codex for letting me write this and getting it out there. Jason was unbelievably supportive in helping me do that. Everybody in Gauntlet was amazingly supportive in helping me do that. To finish us up, just a few thoughts maybe on, does this mechanic, do you think, support the possibilities of other scenarios? I'm looking at and wanting historical scenarios. I have imagined in a similar way people who have to work together but might have very different points of view. Patrick has suggested to me that maybe I don't need it to be 3 pillars who are all going to the same goal. I just really need to have the historical area and the 3 dealing with each other. They don't have to all reach that same goal. I'd love to hear thoughts on if you think this mechanic has enough legs to work that, work in other scenarios. And do you think that that would be interesting, and any idea of maybe, does it need certain things to work? And just to give an idea, my thoughts on things to do with it is I have one where I'm working on, which is Caesar crossing the Rubicon and dealing with Cassius and with Brutus. So we have the 3 of them as pillars. I have another which is Stalin, Churchill, and FDR at Corfu, the coming up with the plans to beat Nazi Germany. I have another which is the Continental Congress with Jefferson as kind of the true Republican view, and the South and the New England states as the very different viewpoint of how these things are built. How you want to have a new government. So just some thoughts on things I'm working on. Keith, what do you think? Does it have legs?
I think you definitely work with other scenarios. I'm not sure what the secret sauce part is the only thing I would say about that. Like, how closely related do they need to be? Do they all, how opposed do the 3 need to be? Does it need to be 3? Could it work with 4 different factions? I'm not sure, but I think the general idea definitely works. The mechanics would support a wide range of scenarios, but I think, it would just be the testing you going, well, for some reason that didn't work. Which part was changing it that didn't work? Was it that they were too aligned or not aligned enough?
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Walter, thoughts that way?
So as far as having not everybody working together, but working against each other, it occurs to me that there might be a lot of latitude in that as far as the conflict resolution chart, could be worded very differently. I'm imagining to account for that. If you succeed, then, your side can win and this happens, or you can let the other side win, but you gain an extra die or whatever, right? So yeah, I can see a lot of leeway for exploring that. I think that'd be interesting.
Excellent. Thank you both very, very much for coming in and playing this. I hope you enjoyed it, and for helping me out looking at the game for what it is. I'm going to sign off, take us off of recording. Folks at home, I hope that you've enjoyed it. The couple of you who may have watched this, and you definitely should go and find out more about the Gauntlet community. And if you enjoyed this game of mine, then watch more!